Good evening. Welcome to the New York Giants Preservation Society for tonight, Thursday, May 11th, 2023. Jeff Wagner will be discussing his new book, Willie the Met, to our audience tonight. Just some housekeeping on what's ahead for us. Next week will be before next week, to all of the gentlemen here whose mothers are alive and wives, happy Mother's Day. And Indy, if you're a mom, happy Mother's Day to everybody who is celebrating. And we all worship our mothers for letting us grow up to be Giant fans, I think. Okay, so anyway, next week we will have a Wednesday meeting. Mark Simon and Duke Goldman will be talking about Willie Mays, 5-tool player. Mark will be discussing Mays's prowess as a defensive player. And Duke Goldman will be speaking about Willie Mays rooming with Monty Irvin. We will then have off on Memorial Day. In June, we will have 4 meetings. And in July and August, most people travel. We're going to do it every other week. There'll be 2 for each one. All the meetings are scheduled. If perchance I get a chance to get somebody, really huge, though, we will take care of that. And we'll see what goes on with that.
What are the dates in June? What are the dates in June? The first? I have the first 14/22.
Hold on one second. We have June 1st, Dennis Christensen. That's about Les Kiter. David Krell, 1966, basically talking about the Giants always coming in second place.
That's the 8th, June 8th?
That is the 8th. 14th, happy birthday, Norman Coleman. He'll be talking about all ballparks and stuff and related to the Giants. Then we have the Lefty O'Doul and other Giant films on the 22nd. And in July, right after the All-Star break, Evan Weeback will be talking about the Giants. He's a beat writer. And we have Bob Lemoyne. He'll be talking on July 27th. Bob wrote a great essay in the 5-tool book about it's going to be good. It's going to be about Willie Mays, the songs about Mays, and the TV appearances about Mays. It'll be something different, and I think that'll be a lot of fun. And we'll play the Treniers, I think was the name of the song. Say Who, Say Willie. That song that everybody knows.
On behalf of Kiter.
I'm sorry?
Speaking on behalf of Les Kiter.
Dennis Christensen. He wrote a biography on Kiter with Kiter before Kiter passed.
My favorite announcer.
Yep.
Mars, I got him just for you.
All right, thank you.
All right. So I want to welcome back Jeff Wagner. Jeff spoke a couple years back on Did They Play with the Giants? He's got a brand new book out called Willie the Met. And let's welcome back Jeff Wagner to the New York Giants Preservation. Jeff, the floor is all yours. Take it away.
Great. Well, thank you for having me back. I really did enjoy my first visit back in, I think it was January 2021. Since we published that they play baseball for the Giants, I did similar books for the Dodgers, Yankees, Red Sox, Cardinals, and Cubs, which was kind of interesting. So I wanted to reach out to the major fan bases in baseball, so I just did one for each of their teams. So, but this one, Willie the Met, it just came to mind about a year ago when it was the 50th anniversary of the Giants trading him to New York. It made me realize I didn't really know much about that whole situation. I was born in 1960, so I was 12 when that happened. So and I have vague memories of seeing Willie Mays in person when I was in 71, 72. We did go to my dad took me to a few games, so I did get to see him a few times. But at that age, I wasn't quite as appreciative of who I was watching more than where I was at. I just remember, back then you're watching baseball on some 20 some odd inch TV, and when you go to the ballpark, it's just so overwhelming for a kid my age, at least. So I just thought it would be interesting to write about that 2-year period. I actually did a little research. I didn't find anybody who really did that before. So I thought I would. And most of the time when I write something like that, it's mainly for my education first, and then I like to share it. So that's kind of the catalyst of why I started writing it middle of last year. Yeah, it's not a long book, kind of like my first Giants book. It's under 100 pages. It's pretty much to the point. It's not a biography on Willie Mays or anything like that. It's pretty stat driven, numbers driven. I share a little bit of insight on my thoughts and memories. I even dedicated a chapter to Charlie Williams, which I thought was only fair, since he was part of this trade. I didn't really know anything about him until I did a little more research, and he pitched 6 years for the Giants. 74 and 77 were his, I'd say, most productive years, but the ones that he pitched the most in. 77 was, he won 6 games and pitched 119 innings, which was the most during his tenure. 75 was probably his best year. He was 5-3 with a 3.49 ERA and 3 saves. So he was mediocre at best, but I wanted to at least dedicate a short chapter to him. So I did write a little bit on Mays' time with the Giants, more just a highlight, kind of like a highlight reel of things, of some of his achievements as a Giant, and then I focused more after that on his time with the Mets. And obviously the achievements with the Mets don't quite equal his achievements with the Giants, but he did have some highlights as a Met, some interesting little some interesting games he had. Some of the things as a Giant, I made a list here, but I'm not going to go through all of them, that I didn't know about until I did some research, but I'm sure you all are probably pretty aware of it. When he began his career as a Giant, he started out 1 for 25. He actually started out 0 for 12, then hit a home run off of Warren Spahn, and then went 0 for 13 after that. But by June of that year, he was over 300, so it didn't take him long to correct that slow start. I'm sure everybody knows this. Part of 52 and all of 53, he was in the military. I was just doing some arithmetic here. He was averaging about 152 games his first year, and then 54, 55. So if he averaged that in 52, 53, he would have missed 270 games, which certainly impacted his final career stats. If he was able to play, additional 270 games, he would have been way over 700 home runs, I'm sure. 54, he had 36 home runs by July 28th. He was actually on pace to beat Babe Ruth at that time, but according to what I read, Leo DeRocher told him to quit going for the fences, and he ended up hitting 5 more home runs that year, but averaged 379 down the stretch. So but that was kind of interesting. In 1958, he went 5 for 5 versus the Dodgers twice that season. 1960 was 5 for 6 with 3 triples. He was the 4th player to hit 3 triples in the game, and that still is the record. And there's I think there's 5 or 6 players now who've done that. 4. During his career, he played 6. He fielded in 6 different positions. In 63 and 64, he played a little bit of third base. Had 1 assist in late. The second time he played third base in late 64. Played 3 innings at shortstop in early 64, but didn't get any chances. He one point or another, he batted in all 9 positions. And he's still, as of last year at least, he's still the all-time Giants leader in games played, hits, runs scored, home runs, doubles, total bases, and he's second in RBIs, which is kind of amazing. So as a Met, he was traded May 11th, 1972. His last game as a Giant was May 9th in Montreal, where he didn't start that game, but he hit a pinch hit single in the 9th inning, and the Giants 7-1 loss. It was kind of interesting from the start of the 72 season through up to the point of the trade. Mays played 19 games for the Giants, hit 184 with 9 hits, 17 walks, no home runs, 3 RBIs. But from May 11th, time of the trade, through the end of May, for 2.5 weeks or so, he collected the same amount of hits, 2 more RBIs, 2 more home runs, and hit 296 and 16 fewer at bats than prior to the trade. So he definitely got off to a quick start with the Mets. He after the trade on the 11th, the Giants were in New York playing the Mets, and he didn't play the first 2 games, but he played in the finale, and he broke a 4-4 tie with the 5th inning RBI, which ended up being the game-winning RBI with as a home run. And he went 1 for 2 with 2 walks in the game. July 21st, 72 is when he returned to San Francisco for the first time as a Met. He went 2 for 5 with a home run and 2 RBIs in a Mets 3-1 win. In June and July of 72, he would face the Giants 6 times, hit 308 with 4 hits and 13 at bats. But the Giants won 4 of the 6 games. In August of 72, he would hit home runs in back-to-back games for the only time as a Met. He did it against Bert Hooton and Fergie Jenkins against the Cubs. 73, he between July 1st and July 20th, he hit safely in 12 of 14 games and hit 2 home runs for 4 doubles. August 12th, 73 would be his last appearance in San Francisco. He played first base, batted third, but went 0 for 4 against Ron Bryant with a line out and 2 flyouts. August 17th was his final home run, 660 against Don Gullett of the Reds. His last appearance against the Giants was in New York August 26th, where he walked twice, struck out twice, hit a fielder's choice against Ron Bryant. The Giants won 5-4. It was Ron Bryant's 20th victory of the season, and Mays was actually 0 for 20 against Bryant in 72 and 73. August 29th was Mays' final regular season RBI against Rich Trotz and the Padres. His last regular season at bat was September 9th in Montreal, and he was struck out in the 7th inning against Chuck Taylor. 72-73, he faced 5 future Hall of Famers, which we obviously faced prior to the Mets trade, but he faced Seaver, Marichal, Carlton, Jenkins, and Niekro, and he hit .254 against them with 13 hits and 51 at-bats, 3 home runs, and 7 RBIs. So that's just a quick thing, just a quick list of a few things that caught my eye when I was researching it that I didn't know about. So I kind of look forward to. I've heard some of you were actually at the first game he was at as a Met, so I'm really anxious to hear some of your stories and memories, and at the same time a little nervous because I'm sure any mistakes I made, you guys would know it. So be nice to me. So, but that's about it.
Jeff, what's the here's the cover again. I know some of the guys in here don't like seeing him in a Met uniform, but it's the best way what's the best way to get the book?
Amazon is really the only way to get it.
Okay.
I think the link was in your email.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. So yeah, Willie the Met. I think if you search for Willie the Met, it comes up pretty quick on the search.
And again, it's mostly lots of statistics on his tenure with the Mets.
Yeah, there's actually a box score for every game he played in as a Met. So you can see exactly his at bats for. I'm probably not gonna be able to see this, but every at bat against every team on every day he played, as well as just the game overview of every game he played, and then a whole bunch more highlights similar to what I was reading. So yeah, it's just again, like my first one, a coffee table, pretty quick read, but I think it's pretty interesting for anybody who either wants to remember or didn't really know what he did as a Met, like myself. So
yeah, I'll start off with something I remember and something I didn't know. I was at the Mays first game as a Met, and I've said it before. We drove into Queens. It was a nasty day. All along, they thought the game was going to be canceled, but the game went on, and that was, in my mind, the only I had become a fan in 1969, so I've now invested in them. That was the only time it was okay for the Giants to lose by the way they lost, by Mays beating them. It was a tremendous moment that the fans all enjoyed there. So that was a great thing. And the thing I didn't know, and I saw in your book, I mostly heard it from Norm. I didn't know that his first game at Candlestick Park against the Giants, he also homered. I've never seen any video of that. If you go to YouTube, you can see Mays hit a home run in his first game as a Met, but I've never seen any video or any audio of Mays' first game back at Candlestick Park. Maybe Norm could fill us in a little. He was probably there. So anyway, Steve Rothschild, you're up. You got to unmute, Steve.
Sorry about that, Jeff. Thanks for coming on. I did look through your book, and you alluded to it. I looked at the box scores, and he did rather well against, considering how awful he was for those, at least the last year. He did well against the Hall of Famers. It's not really a Willie Mays story, but I think you guys will enjoy this. Ferguson Jenkins, I've had him as a speaker 4 times in my community. He no longer lives out here. He moved back to Texas. But the first time he was here, one of the questions was, who were the roughest guys you had to face? And he said Mr. Mays was certainly one. Mr. Aaron was another one. But Mr. McCovey was the toughest for me. And then he alluded to a nice, interesting, funny story. The Cubs were in San Francisco to play the Giants at Candlestick. And his roommate was Ernie Banks. And they were in the hotel. And that night he was pitching. And the phone rings in the room. And like he says, Ernie picked it up and said, Fergie, it's Mr. McCovey's limousine driver. He's here to pick you up. He wants to make sure you get to the ballpark. So I thought that was an interesting story. But
That's funny.
Like a lot of you New Yorkers, I guess, I was at the game that Willie announced his retirement. And that was a tough night. And it was an interesting night with him getting all the Topps baseball cards and somebody there from every year he played. And now knowing about the sign stealing, if you remember, I think the 51 member of the team that was there that night was Sal Evars. That we know later on that he broke the story. Thanks for coming on, Jeff. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
Steve, before we go on, Jeff alluded to Mays being in the Army, and I posted something on Facebook. They have christened the USS Cooperstown, and that is to honor all of the Hall of Famers who went to battle to protect our country. And of course, Mays, each room has a suite with the Hall of Fame plaque on the door, which is a very cool thing. And also, Major League Baseball is thinking very much of having the Field of Dreams game next year at Rickwood Field, where Mays played for the Birmingham Barons. So just some more Willie Mays stuff. Mars, you're next.
Thank you, Jeff, for joining us. Pleasure.
Thank you.
In the book, I have a couple of comments and partially a question, I guess. The 60s were tumultuous times when I was growing up. I was going to CUNY, City University of New York, in the Harlem campus. We lived in Inwood Hill Park, Steve Rothschild's neighborhood too. And when Mays, the only opportunity I had when the Giants moved was listening to Les Kiter on Recreated Baseball. That was so exciting. I think that perhaps I might have never moved to San Francisco if Willie Mays turned out staying or traded to the Mets. But by the time that happened, I was already in San Francisco and I was going to Candlestick to watch him play. And I got to tell you that some of us, were born after the Giants moved, and some of us watched Willie Mays play in the Polo Grounds. I am one of them. So I want to relate a story on the last Giant-Dodger game played in the Polo Grounds, which our members have probably heard before. So the Giants were losing 2-0 off of Don Drysdale in the Polo Grounds versus Kirk Barkley. And because Drysdale walked and Gilliam hit a 2-run homer. In the 4th inning, Mays tripled. The Giants took a 3-2 lead in the 4th inning when there were back-to-back triples by Jablonski and Mays. And then Hank Sauer hit a 3-run homer. The lead held up. Giants won 3-2 on my 10th birthday, September 8th, 1957. I'm wondering, it will always be, something that, well, you never know, that when the Mets were created, if Willie Mays would have come back to the Mets back then, in 1962. I might have moved back. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Morris.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Mr. Klink, you're up. Gary,
Well-
is your hand? Gary Brown, is your hand supposed to be up? Yeah. Okay. I will call on you once. You'll go after Paul. Go ahead, Bill. I'm sorry.
A quick question about something you said, Gary, and that
Yes.
was about the USS
Cooperstown.
Cooperstown. Was the keel laid for that at Newport News? Do you know?
I'm sorry.
Was the keel laid for that? Did they build that at Newport News Shipbuilding?
I have no idea. I'm sorry.
No,
I just.
It was built in the Great Lakes. The keel was laid
Okay.
somewhere up on
Okay.
Lake Michigan or Lake Superior.
That's why it's good to have smart men like Jim Gates in this group. I just saw that it was commissioned on May 6th, his birthday, and the news I saw, the articles came out on like the 7th or the 8th, and I posted it, and it's very nice of what they did.
Yeah.
Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just hoping that it was Newport News because that's where he played his ball in the Army at Fort Eustis, Virginia, in northern part of Newport News near our old home. A quick comment about something that's always come up about his last games, those being in the championship series and the World Series. And if you look at the numbers, he certainly did prove himself well. He hit 333 in the championship series. He hit 286 in the World Series, and that always begs the same question of why did they go with unfortunately
Wade Garrett.
Wade Garrett to bat there. Did you get any sense? Do you get any feedback on that from anybody, Jeff? Then I had another question. No.
No, I was wondering that too. I mean, he got a game-winning hit in this game 2 of the World Series, and he barely played after that. And I don't know why. I don't remember.
Yeah. The other was there was a comment made about his last home run. The last home run, it was actually a game in which it was related to me that Jim Beecham, who is pictured there, he actually had the last bat. Now, I don't know where it went after that. And this is a better close-up of it that's got the stamp on it. But he got a hold of the last bat that Mays had. It was I think it was against the Reds, and Kranepool actually said to him after he had hit the home run, then on the next game he pulled up the same bat and he cracked it, and Kranepool said somebody ought to get that man's bat, and indeed it was Beecham who got that same bat. Jim's passed away and I've lost track of the family, but that's something that ought to, if not to be in the hall, it ought to be somewhere sacred, considering it was the last bat, and we know where it was. We just don't know where it is today. You probably didn't hear anything about that, Jeff? Do you know?
No, sorry.
I don't. That's one of the great mysteries on it. The final thing I'd relate. I don't know if you spoke with Harry Parker, who pitched for that '73 team. I did in an article I wrote, and he talked about that World Series, and that much has been made of the light and how it affected Willie's ability to field. Well, it also could have affected his ability to hit, or at least he wanted that to be the case. He said to Ray Fosse, he said, Parker said, we had the tying run and scoring position, and Willie was up. Raleigh Fingers, the A's pitcher, threw a fastball. It was twilight. It was twilight and really hard to see. And Willie turned to Ray Fosse, the catcher, and said, "Boy, I can't see that fastball." Little did he know that Willie was setting him up for a fastball. Fingers came in with a fastball. Willie hit a hard grounder into center field, and the run scored. Fingers threw his glove in the air and was really disgusted because he's a slider pitcher and he wanted to come back with a slider. And that turned out to be Willie's last hit. So that's the last hit, the last homer, from the words of the players on that. So
Yeah, I've heard that story before. Yeah.
yeah, the Harry Parker actually told the story. I didn't actually get it from Fingers on that because I didn't interview him and wasn't on the team. But I'm looking forward to reading this. Anything that has to do with the beginning and the end of Willie's career is worthy of a read. Thank you, Jeff, for doing that.
Sure. I did read that a lot of the Mets players were trying to get Mays to come back in 75, but or 74, but he had made up his mind before the postseason started that he was done.
You know, Bill, besides Beecham being a hard name to say, he also has a claim to fame with Mays.
What's that?
He relinquished his number 24.
That's right.
He was number 24 on the Mets. He gave up the uniform to Mays.
Only fitting that he would get the last bat.
There you go.
You know,
Harvey, you're up.
thank you.
Harvey, you got on mute.
Yeah, okay. I think I did it. I saw Willie when he was 23 and I was 8 at the Polo Grounds. And then when he became a Met, my wife and I would go to Shea Stadium as much as we could on the weekends to see Willie play. So we saw Willie, and in the intervening years, we would go see when Willie played for the Giants. I don't know if you came across in your writing and research an article written in the New York Times. I'll give you the date in a second. It's around 2000 by Ira Burkow. And it's entitled "The Greatest Play I Ever Saw from 3 Points of View." It's Willie on the base paths in a game in August or July and August, and a ball is hit to right field, and Willie rounds third base and starts running slow as if he's an old man and he can't make it. And the right fielder figures he can get Willie at the plate, and he winds up to throw to the plate. Willie speeds up, and Willie scores and knocks the ball away from the catcher, and the batter circles the bases and scores also. Now Willie was 42 when he did that. So Burkow was in the press box. He was a sports writer for the Times. He gives his recollection of what he saw. And then he has a chance to interview the catcher, who was Johnny Oates, and he interviews Willie. And he asks Willie, "Do you remember the play?" Now, I'm just going to read this paragraph. And this is Willie. "Absolutely," he said. In that familiar high-pitched voice, "It was against the Braves. But there's more to it. See, I was on second base, and Felix Millan was a runner on first. Ralph Garr was in right field. But not only did I score, I slid into the catcher, it was Johnny Oates, and I pinned him to the ground so Millan could score too." 42 years old, he was obviously not the say, "Hey, kid," but he had the sixth tool. We have voted that it's not 5 tools, it's 6 tools, and Norm amended that last week. There's 7 tools. The 6th tool is he sees the whole field. He manages the whole field. He creates the whole field. And Norm added charisma. So Willie with the Mets was still Willie Mays. And I got to correct Steve on one thing. I was there the day Willie said goodbye to America. Bobby Thompson was there also.
Those Dusty Rhodes.
Yeah, Thompson was probably there for another year. They had a player from every year at the game. And I just remember Evar's 51. Thompson was there too. You're right. Thompson was there. Snyder was there.
To me,
Dusty
To
Rhodes
me,
was there, too.
there's only one player that represents 1951. I don't know about Sal Evar.
Well, no, he did. Well, it was a teammate of his, what it was. teammates from every
I,
year.
I understand that.
All right, whatever. Not worth arguing.
No, you're right.
Thank you, Harvey. Mr. Manis, you're up. Howard?
Hi, how you doing? As I said at last week's session that we had, I was a big Willie Mays fan, and it killed me that I could not see that first game with the Mets. I was a college student up at Syracuse, New York, Syracuse University, and 3 TV stations in Syracuse. That's all we had, 3 TV stations. None of them, they were the ABC, NBC, CBS, so no local stations. I couldn't watch that game, and I was really quite pissed. But we did have radio, and I think we got the feed from maybe WNBC. And when Willie hit the home run, I think it might have been Kine. I know Lindsey Nelson, I believe, did the TV because I've seen the replay. But I think Kine did the radio because in those days, the announcers they switched from radio to TV, back to radio, back to TV. Not like today. One other point about Willie's first season, I'm sure many of you will remember this first season with the Mets. The Mets went on an absolute tear when they got him. They were something like 25-7. And Willie made the cover of Sports Illustrated with the headline, "The Amazing Mets," MAYSING, with not spelled the way it should be, but a Z. So I thought that was going to be an incredible story that the Met, he came to the Mets and he led them to a championship. They had the last one, of course, in '69. And then the Mets had all kinds of injuries. Everybody went down, I think, ironically, except Willie. He might have had some aches and pains at that point due to his advanced age of 41. And I know he did not get along with Yogi in some regards. He wanted to play, and Yogi didn't want him in there at times. And they had a cordial relationship back in the early days when Willie was a young guy at the Giants and Yogi was a young guy with the Yankees. But it was kind of like oil and water when they were manager and player. But again, I thought the Mets were going to make make an incredible story, make the playoffs. And in those days, of course, it was just East and Western Division champions. But those injury bugs got to the Mets, and so Willie was kind of like an afterthought for that season. It was great that he was there. He made a contribution. His stats weren't the greatest, and I know the book is stat driven, but the intangible, the fact that he did something to those Mets, and they just won like crazy until the injuries hit.
Thank you, Howard. Paul, you're up.
Thank you. Jeff, my question is about Willie's relationship with the Mets players. How was that? I can only imagine, but I can guess. People were proud that he was there. Was he the kind of fatherly figure offering advice to people, encouraging his teammates? Is there anybody he was especially close to or somebody he didn't get along with that well?
Well, he was very close to, if I remember reading, like the couple of people who were mentioned here, Cranepool, and Beauchamp. Yeah, I mean, from what I read, he was definitely a mentor type presence with a lot of the players. I don't remember reading anything about anybody didn't get along with him or didn't like him. But I know a lot of players really liked him on the team. And like I mentioned, I remember reading that a lot of players are trying to get him to come back in '74, but he had already decided to hang up the cleats. I think he was a pretty popular teammate from what I read. I do remember reading a little bit about the Yogi Berra relationship, and I think that might be one of the reasons why he didn't play a whole lot after Game 2 in the World Series. But what his reason is, I have no idea what that would be. It would be interesting to know. But yeah.
You know, it's interesting. I remember the day that he was traded, and I was watching the game on television. And as a kid, you grow up and you always associated Willie as a Giant. And certainly I watched the Mets too, because I was in Massachusetts and Channel 9 had all the games on TV. But I really felt conflicted. I said, oh no, who do I root for? What about my Giants? And then what about Willie? You know, and it just became very difficult. I was glad to see him because I got to see many more games on TV. But it was hard being a Giant fan and
Fortunately, both of the loves for the Giants and Willie stayed, but it was just very interesting to watch as a kid and wondering, what was going to happen next and how your hero was going to be.
Yeah. I was 11, 12, 13 years old during that time. So I was more into baseball cards than anything else. And I do remember getting this card in 73
Great.
saying, boy, what a weird looking card. That just doesn't look right.
Yeah, I
But,
learned, I was just a fan a few years, and the only thing I knew about trades was trading your baseball cards. When I saw that he was traded, I was like, what? They actually can move players from one team to another, and let alone be the team I'm rooting for is trading him for basically a nondescript pitcher. So, Gary Brown, you're up.
Hey, how's everybody? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Jeff, thank you so much for coming on. It's be quite an addition to anybody's library. It's funny, I was talking to my ophthalmologist this morning, and he's a big baseball fan, and he was a Mets fan at that time, and he remembers being at the first game that Mays played as Met at Shea Stadium. He said the place was just absolutely electric, seeing Willie there. My memory of Mays as a Met really isn't as a player or a box score, but it was something I saw. So a lot of you know I was in the automobile business for close to 30 years. And one day when we were in college, a whole bunch of us were sitting around. We got out about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We were sitting around one of the guys' rooms. So, what do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? It was like the scene of Marty with Ernie Wagner, and Joe Mantell. So I'm listening to this tennis match go back and forth. And I stick my head out from the paper and said, well, the Mets are playing the Reds at Shea Stadium tonight. That's a great idea. So a bunch of us put together a pool for the one guy that did have a car on campus. Much of us could pile into a 69 Valiant. We drove up there. We got up there too late to get autographs. We got up there about 5:30 in the afternoon. And I'm walking past the players' parking lot. And I see this pink Imperial with a white vinyl roof. For those of you who don't remember, the Imperial was Chrysler's rejoinder to a Cadillac Coupe de Ville or a Lincoln Continental Mark IV. It was a land yacht. You could put two smart cars back to back. It still wouldn't be as big as one of those. And I'm looking at this car. Carnation pink, white vinyl roof, white leather interior. Had white sidewalls, but it had black rims. Those were the days of the wire wheel covers. You could be driving and have them on, be idling at a traffic light. By the time you pull away, they'd be gone. They were that much in demand. And I looked and I said, who the hell would drive something like that? They could have heard me in Connecticut. I was 18 years old then. I'm nearly 70 now. And I look at the license plate and see say hey. I said, I'll be a son of a gun. It was Mays's car. Years later, I'm working for a Lincoln dealer. We get a dealer call us down in South Jersey looking for a Lincoln. I said, do you have a Silver Town Car Cartier? Well, I think so. It's for Willie Mays. It's for Willie. He can have anything he wants. Give me the last 8 of the serial number. He did. And I said, put you on hold. Check the stock book, car was there. Check the office, the folder was there. So call tomorrow, make the details. So a couple of years later, I'm at an autograph show. I look him in the eye and said, you still driving Lincolns? How'd you know I was driving Lincolns, man? Well, your man in South Jersey called and said it was for you. Yeah, I got a white one and a silver one. Well, the silver one's what he wanted. And we had a good laugh about that. And he said, yeah, I remember he used to be a Chrysler man, New Yorkers, Imperials. He said, yeah, my man in Long Island City retired. He said, in fact, I remember that pink Imperial you had. So, yep, it was the last year I played. So the funny part is, to wrap it up, 6 years later, I'm out at Olympic playing in the Giants Community Fund outing. And I see a big crowd around a car. And it was a Silver Town car. I see the plate, I see Say Hey 5 or Say Hey 7, whatever it was. And I'm sorry to say that I baited him, because the cars look so much alike for about 8 years. I said, hey, Will, is that a 97? He said, no, man, it's a 94. It's got 23,000 miles on it. That's all. And I look at the trunk and I see a Kindle sticker. I said, this is too good to be true. I looked him in the eye and said, you know, Bill Kindle got that car from me. And he started roaring, laughing. I said, I can't make this stuff up. He said, you're going from pink Imperials to silver Lincolns? Man, oh man. But he always liked big cars, and the flashier the better. He got that from Leo, and although I don't think Leo did any favors in that regard, but we always had laughs about that whenever we talked to each other.
Thank you, Gary. Nice story. Norm, you're up.
Okay, well, Jeff, I want to thank you for bringing back two special memories for me, both special and bittersweet. As Gary said, yes, Gary, I was at the Mace's first game back to San Francisco, and I was at his last game also. And both of those were pretty special, and in some ways pretty sad at the same time. But I can tell you that in the top of the fifth inning, every time Mace came up, I believe every fan in that ballpark was rooting for Mace to hit a home run. And the
Norm,
top of
was it a big crowd?
No, it was not a big crowd. It might have been anywhere from, I think it could have been 16,000, 20,000 tops. But they were the real fans. And Mace hit a two-run homer in the top of the fifth off of Jim Barr. Jerry Grody scored it in front of Mace, and the place went wild. It was just such a special moment that Mays came back, and because he was a showman, the charisma, he had it. When it came time to do something special, Willie Mays was going to do it, and he did. And it was just thrilling for everyone there. And then the last game, just having him walk on the field, and this was a crowd, Gary. I mean, this place was filled, and it was just a moment I will never forget. I mean, there were tears, coming down the side of my face to watch Willie Mays walk on the field in San Francisco for the last time. And so, thank you, Jeff, for giving that back to me.
Oh, more than welcome. Yeah, I should have mentioned that I live in the Bay Area. I was born in the Bay Area and lived my whole life here, and so yeah, my memories of Mays in the 70, 71 when I started, 72, when my dad was taking me to Giants games. I was out here at Candlestick Park. Yeah, I should have mentioned that earlier. I'm not in New York.
Norm or Jeff, did those two games you're talking about, first game at Candlestick as a Met, last game at Candlestick as a Met, who won the games?
The Mets won the first game, and I believe the Giants won the other one.
Gotcha. Thanks, Steve. Do you have another question?
Yeah, I just posted it. Gary Brown talked about the car dealership in Long Island. One of the times that I was able to get through to Mays on the phone, and he was still his hearing was still okay. What's your name? What's your name? And I said, my name is Rothschild. I said, oh, my dealer when Long Island's name was Rothschild. So I said, there's a lot of names Rothschilds. But the question I have is basically for Norm. I'm not even sure where I saw it this week or last week. The first known photo of Mays as a player. Do you have that, Norm?
The first known one?
Yeah, the Chattanooga Choo-Choos as a 15-year-old.
I do not.
I have it in my closet. You've probably seen it, right?
I've seen it. I don't have it now.
Okay. Well, you can get it. You can always probably get it online or whatever. Anyway, Gary, this is terrific. I know people, feel the same way as I do, that you put this together for the month, that we have this 3 weeks in a row, and then we go to Les Kiter. He beat the ball. It's all the same. You did a great job getting this to be Willie Mays month. It's a shame that none of us could get through to him on the phone, because it really, at least in my way, it was my intention to speak to his son and let him know what was going on with this group. I mean, how many groups like this are having these calls today and conversations today about the great Willie Mays, who's now 92, but it is what it is. Good job, Gary.
Thank you, Steve. The whole month I've been putting stuff on Facebook. Most of it's been dedicated to Mays. There was just, the new Mays book came out. Jeff's talk tonight will go on Facebook along, the recording and a link to his book. and you know, the thing with the USS Cooperstown and this and that, and just the feedback, the love for this man goes beyond that. And you know, he's got to be a certain age where he should be, you know, lauded, and that's why I tried the best this month to get all of the Zooms related to him. Now with this new book out, I've already gotten people to speak. It won't be every month. It won't be 3 in a month, but at least one a month will be something from the book. You know, Jeff talked about Willie Mays night. Well, very close to the anniversary of him saying goodbye to America, we're having the writer of that story come and talk to the group about Willie Mays night and saying goodbye to America right around that period. So this group existence and of all of you New York fans, most of you stayed Giant fans because of him. And we owe him a debt of gratitude. He's given us lifetime worth of enjoyment. So that's why I did it, and I'm glad everybody's enjoying it. Anybody else have a question for Jeff before we wrap it up? So Jeff, just one more time.
I enjoy it, but I'm not a Mets fan.
We know you're not a Met fan. Would you stop already? Here is Willie the Met chronicling Willie Mays' return to New York, reviewing Mays' final 139 games. If you're
definitely getting the book.
If it's an inexpensive, quick read, and if you're a Mays fan, you owe it to yourself to add it to your collection. Jeff, any final thoughts?
Was Frank Lewis ever a Giants fan?
Who?
Me?
Yes,
Yeah,
he was.
I was.
Yes, he
I
was.
But they betrayed me.
Well, we'll get to that later. Jeff, any final thoughts?
No, just thank you again for having me on. It's always fun
Just a
chatting
quick
with you.
thing.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
And I don't think it's in the book, Jeff, but I think some of the guys will know this, that one of the things that Willie Mays is most proud of when he came on board in May of 1951, his waist size was 32. When he left September of 1973, his waist size was 32.
Wow. I didn't know that.
I still can't believe he owned the chicken franchise from last week. So
I'm telling you, Gary, his neighbors, their last name was Hall. Their son, who was Willie's godson, went to my day camp. That's when I met Willie Mays, when I was in his apartment. They owned Hall's Chicken. And that's why I asked last week. I'm sure somehow there was a connection. They got him started.
Right. Jeff, what is your next project on? Anything we should be aware of?
Well, it's not really New York based, but yeah, I'm working on kind of a Bay Area sports, 1970 to 2020, a fan's perspective of 50 years, and quite a bit has gone on in Bay Area sports during that 50-year period.
Well, we got a lot of Bay Area fans in here, so you'll keep us posted. Guys and gals, let's give it up for Jeff Wagner.
Thank you, Jeff.
All right, so we will reconvene next Wednesday for our last of the May shows for May, the month of Mays. And until then, I will hang out here, talk about the Giants with everybody. But happy Mother's Day, Hindi, and everybody else's moms. Enjoy Sunday. Of course, every day should be Mother's Day, correct, Hindi? We love you, Hindi. Have a great night, everybody. Good night.
All right. Thank you.